Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Jane the Virgin, Season 1, Episode 11, Chapter 11. In this episode, Jane has to decide between what is practical, and I'm putting that in quotes for many reasons, and what is her dream. And it's just as difficult to sort out on a TV show as it is in real life. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. I am so excited to talk about this weirdo episode, you guys. There are some twists in this that one of them kind of saw coming, but I still am not entirely sure what the deal is with it. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Thank you to Lauren for commissioning this episode. I'm so sorry. I'm really bad with the fucking, the thank yous and getting the names right with the show. I don't know why. I'm so sorry, everybody, but thank you, Lauren. But yeah, there's some intrigue happening here that the direction it's going in, I'm very interested to see, because you guys know, there are certain things that while I am a fan of flawed characters, everybody has this. There are particular types of flaws that can really grate on you in particular. And one of the things that I struggle with, as well as I'm starting in the middle. I'm gonna back off, and I will circle back and I will talk about this when the time is right. I swear. I'm so sorry. So let's start things off here. We have another flashback to Jane, and we find out that Jane's mother and grandmother fought all the time when she was a kid. And so what she used to do in order to end it and make sure things just blew over was send a I'm sorry apology letter to her grandmother from her mom, and let her grandmother believe that everything was all over. And that way in the morning, when her grandmother came out and ran into her mom, she could just say, oh, let's just drop it in response. And the whole way that it is written is you know that I'm too proud to apologize in person. I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. And it's the sort of thing that I don't feel would ever work in real life. People just don't let things go completely like that. They would do things like, I thank you so much for sending that letter. It meant a lot. That would be the way people would handle it. So just being let's just drop it in the morning, and it falling out very, very easily, it just doesn't seem like it would even work one time. Never mind it working apparently repeatedly from when she was, very little up to today. Her grandmother and mom both still are not aware that she used to do this. However, I'll let it go. And this is just part of her having a lot of difficulty with conflict. And, this is the kind of thing where it's easy to be well, nobody likes conflict. And that's such an easy thing to say, because you would really think, but there are people who like conflict. There are people who thrive on it. And it's a game. It's wild to meet people like that, because I genuinely do not know where they get the energy. But I personally am somebody who avoids conflict to a point that is damaging sometimes. And it's a really funny thing when I have this online personality with my show of being extremely opinionated and being really aggressive about certain topics and in your face with my feelings and judgments on stuff. But when I am in person with people, unless the issue that I'm taking with them is something that feels based on a principle of how they treat others, I tend to sort of like let things go because I don't want to start things, especially if it's like not my family. If it's like Owen's family, I don't want to step into it with his family. Never mind like dealing with just the day-to-day stuff with like people who do service work, you know. I will get the wrong drink and I won't say anything. I will, you know, and I've gotten better about it, but it's just another place where conflict just bothers me. And what I find really difficult about conflict for myself is that I have a style of communication that is so direct that people who are not like me see it as aggressive isn't even an adequate word. Like they see it as an attack and they take my face, which is just my like serious concentrating face, as being deeply angry when that's not what I'm trying to project at all. So I have come to people thinking that I'm being reasonable and measured with a conflict that I want resolved, and they react so strongly that I realize I have misjudged the way I handled the situation, or that their communication style is completely at odds with mine. But like, this was before I really understood how that works, you know? So, and I'm also an arguer, and I often don't want to get into it with somebody unless I know I'm going to be allowed to like back up my position, because so much of the time you're really only supposed to, and I put that in quotes, like supposed to in terms of societally, you can bring up something that you have an issue with. And if the other person just sort of like doesn't engage, you could maybe make one more try. And if they still refuse, you let it go, or you are supposed to let it go right away. And I'm not like that. Like if I'm going to bring it up and you attempt to minimize it, if anything, I'm going to get more aggressive about it because, okay, I finally like got the courage up to say something. If you think we're just going to not have this out right now, you are wrong. So all this to say, conflict is really difficult and really uncomfortable. And the anxiety of it, like at one point she says to Raphael, I just hate when people in my life don't get along. It makes me anxious. And he says, why? And I was like, why? Are you an alien? What do you mean, why? Like, it's just such a weird thing to ask. And I guess that points to what a different life he has led, that probably for him, people in his life not getting along has just been par for the course for so long that it's not even really a thing anymore for him. Whereas she has a much smaller world that she operates in with people who are a lot less, I don't want to say a lot less genuine, because I'm not sure that's entirely fair, but it seems like her family is a lot more like sincere with each other, at least, than his family is amongst themselves. You know, they don't seem like they're exactly open and vulnerable with each other. So anyway, I just, I really sympathized with her wanting to like get everybody to get along, and the whole like giving him a bunch of information about her mother that he needs to memorize. It was the sort of thing that I personally felt like was weird, because if I were Xiomara, and this guy who I have only like spoken to a couple times is mentioning that I'm a Taurus, I feel like I would. She does say something, in fairness to Jane, about how she's not an idiot, which he responds to in Spanish. Hey, what's up? But she doesn't seem sort of put off by it. She's more like, okay, well done, even though it is a bit over the top. I don't know how I would feel about it. I think I'd be a little bit weirded out. But, you know, I guess Jane is aware of how her mother's going to respond to things. So this episode centers a lot around what's going on with her career, because she starts off in a conversation with her mother about Raphael. And her mom is saying that she's on board, again. And Jane is like, you're not really completely on board, though. And Xiomara is like, look, this happened really, really fast. And it's difficult for me to, let this go. And I'm worried that you're doing something because you really want this, family image in your head. And she says, because maybe it's not right for you. And Jane says, because I think it is right. And I just really, this is what's so funny for me about this episode is how much I sort of turned a corner from being kind of on Xiomara's side to then being like, oh, Xiomara, pump the brakes, girl. So this scene, I'm kind of on her side and I get Jane being frustrated, but I also feel like, Jane, you have to do what you think is right and not expect everybody to always be fully on board and be willing to stand by what you're doing without constant external validation, which is what's said to her by Rogelio later on. But he's talking about more in a impersonal sense about her writing versus personal choices. It's just the sort of thing that I understand her wanting her mother to be supportive, but frankly, her mother is being supportive. It's just that she doesn't agree with her decision. And what it feels like Jane wants is for her mother to fully agree with her decision. And you can't just change people's minds like that. You can convince her over time, but I feel like Jane is being really impatient and wants her mom to just do this about face and basically fake it, which I don't really think that is what you want, Jane, But anyway, so this conversation gets cut off. We jump over to her talking to Raphael about dinner with her mom, and he agrees, but he's in the room with Rose at the moment, and he is talking to her about the possibility of his father being Sin Rostro. And this whole thing, there's she doesn't really have any actual evidence. It's just more her overall suspicions and the way that everything seems to fall together, which makes sense. She says something about how she wants to go to the police, and he's like, we don't have any actual evidence. And the tunnels and everything, I don't know who ordered that. Let me find out who is the contractor, at least, who made these tunnels and changed things around. So, and I'm really surprised because Rose's willingness to go to the police, I would really think she would have more self-preservation than this. Based on what she was willing to do to Louisa, I really would think Rose would be I am going to protect her lifestyle is what she said flat out in words that she wants to keep to Louisa. She was basically just I have a really nice life. And I don't know if it's because there have been murders and she's all right, I have a nice life, but I do draw the line at murder. And, if so, then that's cool. But also you definitely had somebody committed against their will and lied about them. So I'm not entirely sure where you think the line should be, but I don't think you have a clear view. But the fact that she is willing to testify against him already, that's the vibe I'm getting. He didn't really select his partner all that well if he is Sin Rostro. You want somebody that's a little bit more ride or die than this, I would think, if you are that kind of man in the business that he is in. And I would be very interested to know how he would view her if he saw this conversation and her suspicions and saw that she was immediately willing to go and call the cops. So we go from them talking about this to Michael talking about this with Nadine. And they're eating and trying to figure out if they have absolutely anything to go on. There's a little bit of back and forth with them flirting and whatnot. And honestly, I am kind of fine with them. I don't really like her very much. And certainly the way she decides to handle things at the end of the episode, I'm like, girl, you are not good at this. But I really did feel like in this scene, the two of them butt heads in a way that I feel it makes each of them like better. You know, I feel like she's challenging him in a way that he needs to be like brought up and forced to think about things. And it's a shame that she handles stuff the way that she does. But basically he winds up following Raphael, who has tracked down the original contractor for the hotel, who says that he had nothing to do with any tunnels. And when Raphael shows that guy the picture of the bathroom where the trapdoor was hidden, the guy is like, oh yeah, see the tiling around this tub and the tub itself. I did not do this. And somebody on the work site sees, like, here's the conversation and is like, I'll tell you for a price. And Raphael winds up at some like shop somewhere. And he's talking to a guy who clearly knows something, but is being extremely cagey. And he holds out this money and the guy like takes it and says to get out. But because Michael is far enough away that he can't hear anything, all he sees is Raphael handing this guy money. And the two of them, I think, even shake hands in this weird like moment that in context doesn't make sense. It's just that they need, for the moment to work, they need Raphael and the shady man to exchange money and shake hands to make it like they are in on something so that Michael will get the wrong idea. But I just found it extremely strange that somebody's going to be like, get the hell off my property while shaking your hand. Like, that doesn't seem like the way anybody would act as human beings. So Michael, you know, he gets into this whole thing where he tries to go in there and poke around and he gets caught and tries to say he's like looking for Andy. I think he just picks a name out of the air, if I'm not mistaken. And he is, the dude reacts like, you're with him, aren't you? And decks him across the face and apparently goes on to like beat the shit out of him because he winds up in the hospital and has some broken ribs and stuff, which when this guy finds out that Michael's a cop, I feel like he's going to feel like a real piece of, I was going to say piece of shit. Wrong. He's going to feel like a real chump because that is just going to be a headache. And there is a number that this guy called right after Raphael left, and Michael is able to like find that number. And I don't know if they arrested the guy and they got his phone that way, but it turns out the number that he called was to a plastic surgeon. So all of this is really pointing, in Michael's opinion, to the fact that his hypothesis about Raphael is correct. And he is getting more and more like gung-ho about this, so that Nadine she's like seeing that the pieces are coming together and that there are some things that he's right about, but she has a lot of misgivings about what's motivating him here. And so she says, is this about Jane? Because if this is about Jane, I don't want any part of this. The whole thing is that he wasn't supposed to be at this place. And the reason for him being there, and as well as the way that he's like trying to access evidence, he has been told to back off and is just disobeying orders. So going there without Nadine and without telling her, after this like falls out the way it does, he asks her to lie for him and tell their superior that she doesn't know what happened. And she's willing to lie when she gets like confirmation from him that it is not about Jane. But at the end of the episode, she sees him and Jane talking and the way that he's looking at her. And she leaps to about 1,000 conclusions and goes ahead and tattles on him to the boss. And here's the thing. I don't want to be annoyed at her for this, because frankly, I should be more on the side of a cop who is attempting to hold another cop accountable and make them actually follow the rules. And I know that Michael is wrong about his little theory with Raphael. And I know that Michael is motivated by a thing with Jane. So even though the scene with him and Jane in that room isn't what Nadine clearly thought it was, she isn't actually really wrong about any of it. It's just that she's put the pieces together into a different picture than the actual picture. But that picture is a lot closer than the picture Michael was trying to tell her about. So I just I'm sort of struggling here where part of me is just like, girl, what are you doing running to his boss right away? And then another part of me is like, no, you know what? Good for her. Like, she should go fucking tell and get this guy like a knock upside the head to bring him back to earth. But the problem is that they're partners. And when he finds out that she has gone behind his back like this, I don't know what happens to the two of them working together. Like, do they get split up? Do they have to continue working together and sort of get past this? Is he going to be made aware that she reported him? It has to be. Like, I don't see how they can confront him about breaking orders unless they have her say so. And of course, whatever has been building between them romantically has to be completely blown. Pun intended. So anyway, that's what's going on with them. And I'm going to talk about Michael a little bit more later when we talk to Xiomara. Let's go to what's happening with Petra. This whole thing, this is the one that I said in the beginning that I knew was probably the case. Petra is in bed with her mom because they're sharing a bed here. And she's freaking out and having these nightmares. And she's telling her mom that she wants to go to Lachlan for help. And her mother says no, because I don't trust him. But Petra is feeling really boxed into a corner here. And she finally does go to him and she tells him everything. I kind of liked the way that scene started, because Petra is starting to get genuinely freaked out. And Lachlan can see something is wrong. Now look, Petra is an extremely good liar. So saying that he knows her well and can read her pretty well, I have to say, take this with a grain of salt. Yes, he can, but also she is so good at misdirecting. Who fucking knows? But in this case, he seems truly concerned and is just like, what is wrong? You have got to tell me. So she explains about everything with Milos and mentions that she keeps looking for yellow tulips. And he says, what does that mean? And she said that was something that he would always send me when he was on his way home. It was sort of his calling card. And as soon as she said that, I went, oh, girl, don't tell him that. I just had a feeling. And sure enough, we get a scene with her later. He, in this whole flurry of apparent concern about her well-being, he's like, we'll move you to a penthouse. There's state-of-the-art security. We'll make sure that you're not anywhere that he'll be able to easily reach. And he gets her situated, and she is in the tub, and it's very quick from the moment she sinks beneath the water and then brings her head back up. All of a sudden, a bouquet of yellow tulips appear on the table beside her in the bathroom. And when I saw them, my first thought was, it's Lachlan. It doesn't make any sense that they would just appear in her room and it be Milos. Milos sounds like the kind of guy who, if he's sending flowers, they're going to be delivered by a delivery service that comes to her door. It's not going to be this sneaky thing. And if it were a sneaky thing, that person would continue standing in the bathroom until she raised her head from the tub. That man is a confrontational type. So I would not expect this sort of like very carefully staged thing that somebody does sneakily in this one moment. It was so theatrical and not aggressive. And he seems very, very aggressive. So I just wasn't buying that it was him. It just didn't feel like the style that we have seen from him so far. And immediately was like, okay, yeah, Lachlan is doing this. And sure enough, at the end of the episode, when he's talking to her, we have a flashback of him stepping into the bathroom and putting the flowers down and then leaving. He steps in like from the window, I think. I'll check it again once I get to that moment. But I was sort of wondering how exactly he managed to get into her room if it's so high security. And I have to assume that it's just his position. He has a master key that overrides absolutely everything. But the main question here is like why he would do this. And the only thing that I can assume is that Lachlan genuinely is so obsessed with Petra and so worried that she will bail on him again, that he is stoking her fears so that she will cling more closely to him and be more dependent on him and see him as her savior. And she will never want to be by herself because she won't feel safe alone. And at the end, she says something about how she's going to run away, and he offers to go with her and like get relocated in the same job, but like at a different hotel in a different country. And I really do think that that would be extremely, I mean, the thing that abusers do, and I'm not sure he's an abuser in the sense that I tend to think of with this particular behavior, but the thing that abusers do is they separate the person that they are abusing from other family and friends so that that person will never be able to get validation that what they're going through is unacceptable. And what that person is experiencing won't spread amongst the others of their friends and family. And so there's plausible deniability on the part of the abuser. I feel like fleeing the country and pretending to her that this guy was on our heels, but I saved you. And now we're in a strange place and I'm like the only person you know other than your mother. That puts him in quite a position of power. And I do think that this is like not motivated by money, or I think it's motivated purely by his feelings for Petra. And I think she is going to figure it out, and it is going to be very ugly, because it is one thing to tell some little white lies, and I don't even think that's okay, but it's certainly a different thing than to trick someone into thinking a person who could potentially kill them is tracking them down. That is a level of grossness. You are manipulating their fear and anxiety and literal nightmares that they have for your own purposes. And that is just so despicable. So, yeah, I just feel like she finds this out. I don't know what happens to that guy. I just think he better find a place to be relocated anyway. In the chat, Rowan says, fuck Lachlan, but also Petra should have known better. If she was smart, she would have told him a different color. Oh, Rowan, can you imagine if she had done that and he put like purple tulips? And she would know immediately that he fucking like, oh man, that would be a very different scenario, because now she knows he's willing to fake this And now she has to decide, like, yes, I am in a high security penthouse and this is a better situation. But now I also know that any threats I see coming at me, I have to decide whether they're even real. I kind of like that better. I'm not going to lie. Like, thinking that the threat is real has its own thing going on. But her knowing he's lying and, like, still needing to take advantage of that for her own safety, that is a very interesting game to play. I would love that. Well, we'll see. We'll see. So that is what we've got with them. So, okay. We have then the thing with Zoe. And she has made her promise to God that she is going to be celibate. And she is struggling a lot with seeing Rogelio and just wanting to bang him so bad. And they are about to go on a date. And I love this. Her mom is like, you look great. It's perfect. And she steps out and she's in like cargo pants, I think, and a big hoodie sweatshirt, something totally shapeless. It doesn't look like she has almost any makeup on, and her hair is just a mess. And she says that she wants to order pizza, and she starts pouring all this garlic on it. And this is one of those things where I definitely understand doing this for the comedic effect of it. But like, I have so much pride that I couldn't pretend to be like less hot than I am. If I'm Xiomara, I would be like immediately telling him, look, I really do want to fuck, but I'm sorry, I made this promise and you're just going to have to deal with really, really wanting to fuck me and not getting to. So sorry about that. Here I am, just as hot as I have always been. And because like the whole stepping out in clothes that I do not feel comfortable with, that really aren't me, in order to keep him from being attracted, it's just Baroque. And it's funny too, because he's not put off by it at all. He sees her in this outfit and is immediately like, you know what, this is kind of working for me, which I really enjoyed that, you know? And she struggles a lot with telling him, and finally does. And she's worried that he's going to bail on her. And it's sort of funny because in my experience, and this may not be an accurate pool, because granted, the first guy that I got serious with dating was also the first guy that I slept with. So I never had a lot of experience with guys like trying to get me to sleep with them and me having to say no because I was waiting for somebody I was more serious with. Like, I was with the guy and I was with that guy for years and years. I have experienced this only secondhand from friends. But what I have experienced when girls haven't wanted to have sex right away is that guys will pretend to be cool with it out of the gate and then slowly become pushier and pushier, or they grow more and more distant because they are actually starting to like put feelers out with other girls to see if anybody else is willing to give it up. So I have never really seen a dude like completely about face going, oh, I'm not interested now that I know this. I have only ever seen guys who sort of bide their time and act like eventually she'll change her mind, which I mean, sometimes they do, but that's because you stayed in a relationship and got to know each other better, which was the point. But she is really worried that Rogelio is just not going to want to be involved with her at all anymore if she won't have sex with him. And I was like, if Rogelio is a very superficial man, yes, but he's also like a charmer. And I think that he would know what a rude thing it would be to just say, oh, okay, well, I guess I won't come over anymore. If you said that, it's just like, you know, but anyway, he says like, you're worth waiting for. Of course, you know, take your time. And he asks for a estimated time. And we know that she said, until I have a ring on my finger. But she doesn't say that to him, which I thought was interesting. I feel like it's more, she doesn't want to put it in his head that if he marries her, he gets to have sex with her because she's worried that perhaps that would be motivating, and instead wants things to unfold naturally. And I think that's kind of a good idea. Honestly, that's the thing about like having no sex until after marriage, is that people jump into incredibly serious commitments just so that they can get it wet. And it's like not a smart call. So yeah, we'll see. And then eventually her mother is like accidentally blurts out the thing about her not letting a man between her legs. And she says like verbatim what it was that Xiomara said. And she picks up on it and realizes, oh, fucking, you've been lying. And her mom admits, I woke up before you were done praying. And then says, but isn't it nice to know that he is willing to wait for you and would even be interested in you without the sex? And Xiomara admits, yes, that is true. But still, that was a fucked up thing to do, Mom. And it seems like she's going to stick to this, even though, you know, her mom had awoken already and heard stuff. I was wondering if, like, finding out that her mom woke up before she really started this prayer, if she was going to decide the prayer was sort of null and void. But it seems like she's going to attempt to stick to this, and good for her, I guess. I just wish that it didn't seem to come from a place of shame, which is where it feels like it's coming from. All right. So Jane, she is bidding farewell to her class, and she is getting a little bit emotional about it. And then the twins bring a present up to her, and it's like a little onesie for the baby, a goodbye present. And she gets super, super emotional and has to bail, and gets a call from Mother Superior telling her that she is being offered a full-time job, a permanent position, and that she got like the highest score possible from student evaluations. And it's a really great scenario because the other teacher that she would be trained by is also pregnant, and apparently a lot further along. So Jane would shadow her and learn from her. And then that woman would go on her maternity leave and Jane would cover her. And then Jane would go on her maternity leave and that woman would come back and cover Jane. And it is a really, and she says a permanent position in the middle school. And I really wanted to emphasize that point because Jane has been teaching in the high school, which is not what she wanted, but she's being offered a job permanently at the school she did want. So all of this, like, it sounds like an ideal scenario, and she is so excited about it. And I just was like really gratified. Seeing her work pay off. She has been trying so hard. I love her, like, finding out about the scores and Mother Superior being like, are you crying? And she says, yes, but to be fair, it's been building up for a while. So she goes to see her father on set, and he makes an announcement in front of everybody that she is going to be a writing intern for Passion of Santos. And he has not spoken with her about this at all. He is just assuming that this is a thing she would definitely want because she wants to be a writer. So she tries to, like, get him to take a hint in the midst of everything, and he is not hearing her. But finally, he tells everybody to leave, and she has to talk to him about being offered the other job that she really wanted, and that she doesn't know that she would be a good screenwriter. And he's like, look, I get that you want to be a teacher, like, for practical reasons, but that's not your dream, is it? And she says, I mean, no, but telenovelas, to be fair, are also not really my dream. Now, I am not saying that is like she's right about her own dreams, but she wants to write romance. And I don't know, like that feels like it's really, there's a lot of overlap there. So it just seems like, for me, when I heard this, my first question was, what are the hours like? Because if she is interning, sometimes that is not a full-time thing. So it would be possible to potentially do both. And it is very fucking on brand for me that I would suggest doing both. And that whole thing, this rest of this episode is about how she has taken on too much. Granted, though, she still hasn't quit her job as a waitress. And that is a massively demanding job. And she absolutely cannot do 3 things. I think she could teach school and do the writing as well. But it depends on what their schedule is like and how that even works. But anyway, I was just expecting her to be more excited about it than she is. And she seems a lot more trepidatious than I would have expected. And she has this like really funny scene where she's watching the poster Passions of Santos arguing with the mother superior, who is like reprimanding her for not picking the ideal situation, a terrific position, and all of the perks that are going to come with it, with the maternity leave and the lives that she'll touch and everything. And eventually Rogelio like climbs down off of the poster and they begin arguing with each other. And I did really like the two of them like arguing in front of her. I just thought that this was a clever way to handle this. So she does, I'm going to try and do both because she's avoiding conflict. And she gets brought into the writer's room. I was very, very worried that they were greeting her with a lot of enthusiasm, but then behind her back, we're going to be very snarky about nepotism. And I was just not sure how this was going to go, because you know that there is some catch. To Jane's credit, she walks in and offers to be like an errand girl and says something about like, if you want me to go on food runs or anything, let me know. So she's like immediately trying to present herself as somebody who is not assuming they're going to walk in and like write a scene, which I think is definitely the right way, especially if you're an intern. It is kind of assumed that you're going to be a gopher. But they are talking about an episode like that they have to figure out how he escapes and is in disguise. And she offers up an idea about him pretending to be a beggar, which would be very unexpected because he doesn't want to debase himself like that. And she is pretty enthusiastic about that. And they say that they're going to write the scene. And Jane gets excited and she comes back to watch them filming the scene. But they do not go with that. They go with the pirate idea, or a beggar pirate. I don't even know. The scene is so terrible. Every time you see any of this show, it is so bad, you guys. It is, and I know that's the point, but my God, it's so bad. How many of you guys have seen Insecure? I think I watched the first 2 seasons, maybe. But there is an ongoing like period drama that they watch within the show, like Passions of Santos. And it is one of the most hysterical fake TV shows I have ever seen in anything. And it's set during like the Civil War. So, Insecure is almost a completely black cast. And they're watching this like Civil War period ongoing soap opera. And there's a point where this guy is like on the ground getting beat up and he just yells out, "I hate slavery." And it's so stupid. He says it in this really strident, like stage voice. It's so good. So yeah, this is reminding me of that a lot. But anyway, she finds out later that he told them to tell her they love her idea. And she is like, dude, how can I know if I have any talent if nobody is willing to be honest with me? And he hears her. You know, what the deal with Rogelio is that he believes using the leverage that he has over everybody around him due to his fame and his money, that he can create things for people out of thin air. And I completely understand how that would happen. Like, I am somebody who always wants to step in and make things better for people if I can, and can be really a control freak about that. And if I had connections to really high level people in the industries that those closest to me expressed interest in, I'm not going to pretend I wouldn't do some of the same things. Now, I wouldn't tell them to lie. I would want my friend to be, you know, able to succeed on their merits. But I get where he's coming from with a lot of this, especially as somebody who took a while to like break through, that you are hoping you can give them a break sooner than you got yours and keep them from having to struggle. So he tells her to write him a scene, and he writes it, and she writes it, sorry. And, there's this whole thing in this episode about the butterflies that she keeps getting, which I sort of wondered if it was about the baby, but I didn't know how soon that starts. And she brings him the script she wrote, and he reads it, and he straight up tells her that he doesn't like it, which, she takes pretty well. You know, she's hurt, but she's also like, okay, why though? And he tells her that basically it's not melodramatic enough. There should be a lot more screaming. There should be a lot more crying. And that, you know, this isn't the style of a telenovela. And she gets a little bit bummed, and he's like, you're going to have to work on it. It's not something that you can do on your first try. So she winds up running into the head writer, who is played by Carla, I think, from Scrubs. I can't remember her name, the actress. But she tells Jane that she found the script and read it, and that she thought it was very good, and that she shows a lot of potential. And when Jane says that her dad didn't like it, this woman tells her it's because there was no crying or screaming in it. And she does it in this sort of way that's a little bit like eye-rolly, which made me kind of sit up a little bit and go, oh, interesting. So she doesn't take Rogelio very seriously. Like, there's an impression I have with a lot of the staff around him that despite him being ridiculous, they still do take him seriously. But this woman is clearly like sort of in a different place with it all. And it turns out she is sleeping with one of the younger guys on set. And I don't remember if he's an understudy or if he is just like a side character, but this dude is ambitious, and he is cooking something up with the head writer to get himself into Rogelio's place. And I don't know what that's going to look like. I'm sort of wondering if it's going to be like, we're going to have his daughter write scripts that he doesn't like so that he doesn't want to perform them. But I feel like he has enough power in this whole project that if he doesn't want to perform them, then it's not going to happen. I don't really know. You know what I mean? So I'm very curious to see how that all shakes out. Oh, okay. Rowan says, I think he's Rogelio's assistant. Okay. But yeah, the whole plan that can you tell me his name and the writer's name, Rowan? The plan that they have is just, it's not clear. It's just, we know that their main like motivating factor is that they want Rogelio to be taken down. They want him to be brought low so that this guy can be raised into his place. And Dina and question mark, fair. But yeah, Dina, I'll try and remember that. So the thing is, like, she told Jane that she was good, and Jane is taking that to heart and using that to inform her life decisions when it didn't come from an honest place at all. And meanwhile, Rogelio tells her some very good advice about, like, look, it's great that she said that she liked it, but you can't let what people say about your work be all that matters. It has to come from within yourself, which is so true and so difficult. It is so difficult, you guys. Anybody who has work that gets like scrutinized in any sort of public way, you know what it's like. You can get 90 people telling you how much they love your show and how great your chemistry is with your co-hosts. And, you know, people even will tell me like that I helped get them through like really dark periods of their lives. And it's so touching and amazing. And then I get one review of somebody who's like, she's a real know-it-all, and I don't even think she's that funny. And I'm crushed for days. And it's just like, and look, there are ones that I get that are negative that I laugh at and I want to frame because they are so absurd. But a negative review that is like thoughtful and feels balanced with reason, kill me. The worst. I hate them. So I don't blame her, but yeah, it is something that you have to, like, at this point in my life, I don't read reviews anymore because there's no point. I do what I do. And I am not going to change it. I've been doing it for 10 years and it is just the way I'm going to do it. And that's it. So I've just sort of come to terms with the fact that I produce what I want. And if other people don't like it, then they have all kinds of other options and I am not for them. And that's just, nobody is for everyone. But I really struggled with Jane's being like pulled between her grandmother and her mom. Because her mom, of course, wants her to pursue her dream because she knows what it's like to wait and feel like her window closed. But her abuela is so concerned about her long-term welfare and stability, understandably also, that she really feels like Jane should do the teaching position. So the two of them are sort of at odds over this with Jane. When Jane has the dinner with Rogelio and her abuela and mom, and not Rogelio, sorry, Rafael. And Rafael is doing really well and managing to like be charming and careful and just hitting the right notes. And you can see Xiomara like grudgingly trying to give him a chance. And then there's some talk about the choice that she has. And I'm really curious what you guys think of this. He says that he believes Jane should do the writing internship because any expenses that she has to worry about, he will help with. And I have to be perfectly clear that I did not see the issue with the way that he says this to her. Now, Xiomara gets really pissy about it and says something about how we aren't going to be taking any handouts. That's not like, you know, I'm going to read the exact way he says it. So he's agreeing with her mom, and your mom is right. Life is short. We spend all our time working. It should be spent doing something that you love. Beside all that other stuff, the baby and the bills, you know I'll take care of that. I'm so sorry. What's the problem? And he says, I was just agreeing with you that she should take the internship and shouldn't make the decision based on money because I can help out there. And Jane is looking at him, and the narrator says Jane had not told Raphael not to offer any money, but only because she never thought he'd do something so stupid. And I'm like, what is stupid about this? So then Xiomara, I don't think Jane's asking for your help. And he says, I know that. And then Xiomara, I know she's not going to take your money. I don't like the idea that he thinks we'll take handouts. We work hard. All of us do. And he says, I know that, but I want to take care of the baby financially. Good, you should. And if Jane needs anything, and Xiomara cuts in, her family will take care of her. And we are going to be a family. I'm the father of her baby. Not on purpose. Look, I get that if he were to swoop in and like buy her a car, the vibe is weird, right? If he were to be like, I'm going to get you a hot tub, something like, but I just don't see the issue. Like, Jane's entire life is going to change because of this baby. I just don't see the problem with him shelling out some cash. I just don't feel like, I feel like that is the right thing to do. I feel like if he had the money and didn't offer it, I would be a lot more disgusted. And Xiomara saying like, not by choice. No, not by choice. None of this is by choice. And that's sort of the point, don't you think? There was a lawsuit and like, granted, Jane dropped it, but I don't think that was the right call either. And she deserves some help here. Like it just feels absurd to me to dig your heels in when this man is like offering to make sure that you don't have to worry when it's his kid and his sister who fucked up. That feels like the least he could do. I just don't see the issue. Rowan is in the chat. He should absolutely be covering all baby-related expenses, but I know how it feels to be uncomfortable being financially dependent on another person. Sure. But Lauren says, I guess the implication that Jane's dream job can't pay the bills. Oh, I didn't take it like that, Lauren. I thought it was that while she's interning, she's not getting paid. So he would like pay the bills while she's interning. I may be wrong about that, but that was what I thought was being said there. And Rowan's saying, I know how it feels to be uncomfortable being financially dependent on another person. I mean, that's certainly an issue that, like, if it were said that way, if it were about, I don't want to feel like I am at your, what's the word I want? Beholden to you in a like grand scheme, but it's not presented that way. The way she says, well, we're going to take a handout. I just feel like her mother was so insistent about her filing this lawsuit that I really would have liked a scene where Jane tells her mom she's going to retract it, because I just don't see Xiomara having been on board with that at all. And I would interpret him doing this as a way to attempt to compensate around the fact that she withdrew the lawsuit. And Xiomara thinking, Jane, you should be paid because you're being put through a lot. The stress is insane. Your whole body is going to change. Your whole life is going to change. And then suddenly being like, to the guy who is partially responsible for this, I don't want anything from you. They feel very at odds with each other. And I just find it like, I think that what's going on here actually is that she doesn't like him and she's jumping on something because she doesn't like him. But it just compared to the way that she was acting earlier with Jane, like saying that she is entitled to some recompense for what she's being put through. I don't think being allowed to do an internship while he pays for rent and electricity for a few months is out of line at all. So it was just a scene where she got so mad. And it's like, if I am going to take it as Xiomara getting extra angry because she just doesn't like him, the fact that Jane seems angry at Raphael as well, I can't tell if she's angry because he fucked up with her mom and that was the wrong thing to say to her mother, or if she's angry because she also feels the way that her mother feels. It was like difficult for me. It felt like he was being, I don't know, it felt like Xiomara and Jane kind of felt the same way, but they were just approaching the way they talked to him about it in different ways. So then we have this conversation between Jane and Xiomara. Jane says, "What was that about?" And Zoe says, "I could ask you the same thing." And I'm like, you literally could not ask her the same thing. What does that even mean? Ask her the same thing about what? He was the one who said the thing. Like, Jane didn't agree with him. Jane didn't suggest it. Jane didn't do anything. So what the fuck, Zoe? And then Jane says, "You both want me to make a decision. You were agreeing." And she says, "That's your decision, to let him pay for everything?" I'm like, when did she say that? What are you doing? And Jane says, "If I take the internship, I'm gonna keep waitressing. I'm not afraid of hard work. You know that. Raphael doesn't." The fuck he doesn't? What do you mean he doesn't? Yes, he does. That's what she's been doing. And he knows that. And he is her boss. Would know that better than anyone, actually. And she says he was trying to be supportive. And yeah, he said something stupid, but instead of letting it go, you drilled down. What is wrong with you? Why won't you give him a chance? And Zoe says, "I don't see you together." And finally, Jane is like, "I don't get it. What the fuck?" And Zoe flashes back to Michael saying, "We belong together." And she says to Jane, "I feel like it's being disloyal to Michael." And I could have slapped her. I am not kidding. I was so mad. And like I said, I started off this episode kind of on her side. I just feel like Jane is moving way too fast. But her arguing on Michael's behalf, this is the kind of thing that I have never experienced. Whenever I have decided to break off a relationship, my mother has always just been like, "You know what you're doing." And has never, the only time that she ever sort of was like, "Be careful," was when I decided to divorce Brendan. And that was a reasonable thing to say because I had no job and no money and nowhere to live. So fair. But this, like, kind of the parent taking your ex's side is a common thing that I have seen with other people. And it would be devastating to me if my mom were to take the side of a guy I was trying to leave. I would be so upset. So this moment where Zoe, like, basically tells her he hasn't moved on and is waiting for you. Jane's like, "He has moved on." And Zoe says, "No, he hasn't." And then when Jane presses her, it doesn't matter. The point is that Michael was part of the family for a long time, and I get that everything has changed for you, but you gotta give me a second to catch up. And sure, that is not the same thing as saying you're being disloyal to Michael, though. It's just not the same thing. What she is saying, really, without saying it, is she is hoping Jane will go back to him. And she doesn't want Jane to take things too far with Raphael to the point that she can't go back. And all things considered, I really understand Zoe's being worried about the way Raphael treated her. We have the scene where she goes to his penthouse and talks to him. And, you know, she says that you kissed her and then never called. And he's like, that was 5 years ago. And sure, but it does indicate characters, what she replies. And that's true. 5 years is not that long a time. Now, granted, I would say I'm a really different person than I was 5 years ago. It's not that long a time, but a lot can happen. A lot can change in just a couple of years, never mind 5. So both of them have a point here. And the defensiveness she has here, like at first, I'm trying to feel what she's saying, but when he says people change, she says not fundamentally. And I don't know how much I agree with that. Because what do you decide is fundamentally? I guess is really the question. Like, what does that mean? That's a very subjective thing, I feel like. And you don't really get to decide what is fundamental to his personality. You don't know him, to be honest. And she says that they're seeing the world differently because he sees it from up here with this incredible view. And his phone rings. They get cut off and he has to go. But her whole vibe here is, I came to apologize for being rude, but then I basically didn't apologize in any real way, stuck to what I was originally saying, and got kind of aggressive about it again. And I was a little bit annoyed that she bothered. Like, nothing about the way they have interacted has really changed in that scene. All she did was sort of double down. She apologized for being rude, but I mean, she's only very slightly less rude in this scene. And I get that she's protective of Jane, but Jane's a fucking adult and you have got to back off. So anyway, I want to make sure that I have covered everything. So we have the scene with Jane. She is so tired that she gets in a car accident, is in the hospital, but the baby is okay. And she finds out that the butterflies she's been feeling were the baby kicking. And she is very excited about that. And then we have the final scene with the writer and this dude. I'm trying to go and see because in Nicholas, that's his Rogelio's assistant's name is Nicholas. And that is the end of the episode. So I'm over time as usual, but I'm really enjoying the show. I hope that you guys are all enjoying the coverage. And I just like the way that things are escalating and the way that I'm flip-flopping between who I agree with and who I don't is actually kind of fun. Thank you, Lauren, for commissioning this. And I will see you all again soon with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.